Hi, welcome to the Forward Food Tech podcast, where we explore the future of food and agriculture with the people who are taking us there. Today, our guest is Brian Spears, the founder and CEO of New Age Meats. What's fascinating about New Age Meats is that they are combining plant-based ingredients with cultured animal meat. This way, Brian says, you get the best of both worlds, the sensory experience and irreplaceable flavor of meat that's safer and more sustainable than conventionally grown meat. Brian envisions a world in which everyone has access to delicious food that is also sustainable for the planet. He's a guilty meat eater and is selfishly solving his own problem and that of many others with this venture. Brian is a chemical engineer with 12 years of industry experience in laboratory and industrial automation. Previously, he spent 8 years as a co-founder of Sixclear, creating software and hardware products with customers such as NASA, Cisco Systems, and Sandia National Labs. His background with these diverse and broad-reaching customers highlighted to him the opportunity and potential to have impact at scale and for good. Enjoy the conversation between Rob and Brian.
So welcome, Brian, to the Forward Food Tech podcast. It's absolutely brilliant to have you here because you're the first alternative protein that we've ever interviewed for one of our podcasts.
Well, thank you, Rob. I'm really excited to be here. It'll be fun.
It's a fascinating area, and obviously it's a hot topic for investment, let alone what's happening out there. And you guys are rapidly changing what's going on. In a nutshell, just very quickly summarize, what is a New Age Meats?
So New Age Meats, we're able to make, in our case, a pork sausage. And this pork sausage delivers on the experience of eating meat. So in essence, what is it when you see meat and smell meat, and when your mouth waters, when you chew and swallow that? What is that experience to your body? And we're able to make that product, make that sausage, and we're able to make it in a much more sustainable and healthy way. And so we're able to make it outside of an animal's body. And we do it by using cells from the animal, in our case, pig, and we combine that with plant-based ingredients.
So it's not vegan?
I would say it's not. It is actually the cells of the animal, though we've spoken to vegans and they kind of split on how they think about the product. So some of them say, well, yeah, the reason I became vegan is because of the environment or animal welfare, and this doesn't negatively affect the environment or animal welfare, so I'll eat it. But if they don't like meat, or they think meat is inherently unhealthy, then it is meat, so it wouldn't probably appeal to them.
Okay, so there's a whole load of areas that you're already starting on that are fascinating. I mean, I'm agnostic to pro or against this, so something totally straight. So the questions always occurs to me is does it taste good? And I was interviewed on Bloomberg nearly 10 years ago on this very subject for the very first stem cell burgers that were put out. I think they were $250,000 at the time.
Yep.
And they said, would you pay for that, Rob? I said, well, it depends how good it tastes. So
yeah,
even if it's $250,000, although I'm not quite sure about that. But you mentioned taste in your intro. Really, really go into detail there about why this matters to you and what makes it taste different. Why am I going to rebuy your product after I've eaten it once?
I think it's interesting that we, and I try a lot of the alternative proteins. My fridge is full of them, and every time I go out, I'll try something new. And I think typically what you're doing when you're eating that is your mind is kind of saying, yeah, okay, this is kind of like meat. Yeah, maybe the mouth feels a little off, maybe it has a few off flavors, but it's pretty good. But when you eat our product, you don't have this is like meat. You're like, oh, this is meat. This is pork sausage. And we get that feedback consistently. So I eat it all the time. Obviously it's maybe I'm a little biased because I started the company, but there are people that come and try it, and we try to check our biases when they come through the door and just let them experience it. And what we hear over and over again is, oh, wow, oh, this is really good. Effusive praise that we get is, I can't tell the difference. And then people that love it, they're just like, this is amazing. This is one of the best pork sausages I've ever had. And that sounds a little maybe hyperbolic, but if you think about our process, we're actually able to, or the technology, the platform, we're able to really understand the experience of eating meat and what it is that delivers the wow factor. And we can just turn it up because we control the entire platform. We control the entire process. So it tastes amazing.
Well, that's the only place to start, as far as I'm concerned. But the next question, and possibly criticism the industry might say, is nutritionally, how does it differ to, say, a standard pork sausage?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So you can go look at the nutrition facts. So in the US, the nutrition facts on the back, which have all your ingredients and your macros. So the protein, the fat, carbs, things like that. And so if you compare side by side, and we've done this, the label internally, like it's very comparable. You would just look at that and say, okay, that's another pork sausage. In the beginning, it's actually pretty important for us to have it match pretty one-to-one, because what we want is for people to say, like, this is the pork sausage that I know and love. And I flip it over and I look at the nutrition facts in the back, and yes, this is what I've become used to. And this is what makes me comfortable. Now, in the future, we have so much control over what we do that we can make it better. We can make it, if people don't like the saturated fats or cholesterol, or they want certain types of omegas in there, then we can change all of that. In the beginning, though, we're very focused on making a product that people recognize as the pork sausage that they grew up with.
So it's the familiarity that actually is the winning answer here. It's not dissimilar, and you may disagree with me, to the other key well-known brands in the alternative meat market, Impossible and beyond, where nutritionally they're very similar in that case to a burger, which is an interesting business strategy, because nutritionists might say, well, this is an opportunity to make it healthier. But I think commercially, marketing-wise, you're being smart here, because you're making it very familiar. The idea of them being able to move it on will be interesting. Although we achieved it in the UK with sugar tax on sodas, on fizzy drinks, and it didn't change the demand. The profile of purchasing actually just simply continued. It just had to people consume less sugar. That's a really interesting case study. So maybe there's some parallel with that. So the next criticism, forgive me, I'm not trying to criticize you, but I just want to have a pretty open, good conversation with you. Is about the word, and I think this word is overused because it's processed. So the criticism people often have is it's over processed. Although to be fair, there's no definition of over processed. So I think it's a pretty polarizing or barbed view of something. But it's difficult to justify the level of work or processes that you need to do to get to create your product. When you have a conversation around over processed food, a consumer, one of the people like to say, oh, it's really simple, it's really clean, it's not got lots of different ingredients, it's not over processed. So put me in the picture here where you are on that. Sure,
yeah, I think it's a great question, and we certainly are listening to consumers in that regard. I mean, if you take a food, even a vegetable, and take it out of the ground and you wash it and you chop it and you cook it, you've processed it. It is not in its native state. And so any type of preparation is processing. So what people typically mean are just refined, ultra processed. So in that, and really the ultra processing is you break these things down, and then you kind of, and you just break these foods, the crops down, and then remove certain components and then emphasize certain others. In order to recreate some other product, some other ultra processed product that you would find maybe a package in the middle of the store. So we're certainly cognizant of, if you zoom all the way out, like what's the concern there? The concern is not healthy, right? So there's a story around, at least, that is not healthy. And so the health factor is something that we are very focused on. And so we ask a few questions there. What do you want out of your pork sausage? In our case, when people come to a pork sausage, is there a feeling that they're eating something healthy? That's it's always a question in my mind. It's like, do you feel like you're healthy? And so really what you're trying to, as I said before, what you're trying to do is you're trying to match the feeling that we're having now. You have this identity that you want to match, so people know this is the product that they know and love. Really, it's a matter of, is it ultra processed and ultra refined? No, there are certainly products that people eat that are more of that category. But in our case, it is, we'll take the cells, which are cultivated in a new process, and then we'll take plant-based ingredients, and those are intended to provide some of the sensory aspects of meat, and some of the mouthfeel, the texture, the appearance. Short answer is not ultra processed in the way that we process all of our food.
It's difficult because, like I said, there's no definition. The pro-meat campaigners will say our ingredients is meat and highlight the 14 to 21 ingredients in a Beyond Meat or Impossible burger that are added to whatever that is. And of course, creating a brand new form of food has its own issues. You previously, before we started this call, you mentioned that nobody yet in the US has actually got regulatory approval for stem cell-based food. So what is going to make the difference for you to be approved in your situation?
Well, so there are a few reasons that you wouldn't be approved, and I'm not in the other companies. I'm not working with them as far as the regulators, so I would have to look from the outside as far as their experience. As far as our experience the regulators want to see, one, that you understand what's in the product and you understand how to make this safe and healthy for people, and essentially you'd be able to spec out what that is. So these are the types of manufacturing specs that you QA/QC types of specifications that you can create, and then can you do that reliably? So you say it's going to be this, and I want to see your manufacturing facility that it does that. Essentially, you want to be able to have a manufacturing facility that is producing the product, or in our case, the pork sausage, that is producing that pork sausage reliably, and that you can say that, okay, yes, this is meeting the specifications that you said it would. And so really it's just a matter of where the companies are, there are other cultivated meat companies, where they are as far as they're moving to production. So moving from R&D into production. There's only one place in the world that you can purchase cultivated meat now, and that's in Singapore. And there's a company called Just that has done that. But here in the United States, there's actually only one company, to my knowledge, that has a production facility that they've opened, and that's Upside Foods. And they actually just announced it. They just did a ribbon cutting, I want to say a couple of weeks ago, which is actually down the street from us, which is great. But still, they would need to be running that consistently in order to get the regulatory approval. And all the consumers should say, great. And we say great, because that ensures that the product is safe and reliable. And we're happy to work with regulators to ensure that customers feel that way.
Obviously, it's been tougher some than they expected, though, I guess, that they say that they could have any of those guys that are also trying to get it, but they haven't got there yet, apart from those ones you just mentioned. And you touched on a key one there, the 100% plant versus the animal-derived plant. Your reason why you'll win here because of the way it tastes, again, back to that, you think that texture and taste, overall mouth experience is going to be the difference between one of the pure plant versus animal derived plant?
Yeah, I eat all the alternative proteins. Excuse me. I eat all the alternative proteins I can get my hand on, and I haven't found any that make me believe that this is the meat. That this is meat from a slaughtered animal, conventional meat. The difference is that when we make the product, it does tell me that I'm eating conventional meat. It tastes the same. In some cases, it tastes better. One of the big reasons that people don't adopt plant-based meat is that it just doesn't deliver the experience. They eat it and they have to kind of say like, okay, well, this is kind of what I was saying earlier is, all right, this is kind of like meat. I can like squint a little bit and say, I'm eating meat, but I'm not really eating meat. The difference is when people eat our product, they don't have to make that sacrifice. They don't have to imagine they're eating something else. They can just enjoy the product in front of them.
I think it's a really interesting area you're talking about there, because if it doesn't deliver on taste but it mimics the original meat product in a highly processed form, that nutrition is the same, I can't really see that going mainstream. And maybe I'm completely blinkered here or missing something. You put those factors together, that's not a killer marketing product if you look at it from a CPG perspective. The numbers are pretty amazing from the growth forecast for the alternative meat market. They seem to vary hugely, as in the size of that market, whether it's between 5 and 10 billion worldwide in 2019 to 50% growth from then to now and then another leap, probably nearly another 50% over the next 4 to 5 years. So, I mean, they're looking at about 27 billion worldwide market for this sector, though that would be pure plant versus, I guess, animal derived and plant. Are those numbers familiar to you, or have I got the wrong numbers there? I think that.
Oh yeah, I hear numbers like that all the time.
I guess it is that breakthrough from, is it a fashion? Is it a trend conversation? Is it something that will stay there and be a habit? And it will come down to where you are, which is why, frankly, I think we wanted to interview you, because you're talking about taste in a way that you're obsessed about taste in a very healthy way, when I said, Brian. So a bit more about the business. You met your co-founder in London, even Bermondsey Street, that part of the world, where we found out that this is exactly where I live. So it's a great place to be. So when next time you're over, you must come over, say hello. We'll have a beer of some sorts, if we're allowed to do that. Anyway, but so you met your co-founder in London, but you knew that the funding environment was going to be probably the best places in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Tell us about how you then started to fund your business. This is always a really hot topic for businesses listening to this podcast.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my co-founder and I started working together in November 2017 and in Bermondsey. And so we iterate around certain approaches to the space, and more broadly, not just cultivated meat space specifically, but alternative proteins. We're very focused on that as from an impact, from a mission perspective. We're very interested in that. And so we kind of found our unique approach after, took about 6 months, we'll say, talking to probably 200 people and just trying to understand where are the niches in the market, and then what hasn't been done and why hasn't it been done and what's difficult, what's not difficult. Once we had that kind of unique approach and it built on both of our backgrounds, then we started approaching investors. And this was in spring of 2018. The nice thing is that at that time, there was an increased awareness that this is going to be a growth area. And so we saw certain accelerators in the Bay Area very interested. So for instance, Y Combinator is a big one. The one we wanted most of all was IndieBio. And that's because they had actually incubated a couple of the very successful cultivated meat companies, Upside Foods and Finless Foods. And so we, at the time, applied to them thinking that they wouldn't take another company, but we were wrong. They accepted us. And so that was in June of 2018. We received our first pre-seed funding from them. That was about $250,000. And then you want to demonstrate that you can do something meaningful with that. And so we biopsied a pig the same week we got the funding. And then we started growing the cells. And then 2 months later, we had a tasting of pork sausage for 40 people in a downtown San Francisco brewery. And on the heels of that, we raised more money. We raised a Series Seed, and then a few more rounds, and we just recently finished our Series A of 25 million in August.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
You've got a scientific background?
Engineering. So
engineering.
Academically, chemical engineering, and then 12 years of industry experience in research and industrial automation. Basically, the pipeline from fundamental R&D into mass market production. What
elements of, that to me, that sounds like it's a perfect background for what you're doing. So how many people are on your team now?
We're about 33 right now.
What are you looking for when you're taking somebody on? What's I don't mean CV or their personal statement or whatever you call it, but what's the thing you're looking for in character?
We have kind of a mission, culture, values statement. It's in our employee handbook, and I encourage everybody in the company to go look at it. But beforehand, it's the first question I typically ask, which is, why do you want to work here? What drives you? Because there are a lot of places people can use their skills, and there's an opportunity cost for everything you do. We kind of a mantra inside the company is we're all extremely talented people that have come together to do this very hard thing. And if we can't do this thing, we should just go do something else, because we all have a lot of things we can do with our time. What we want, number one, is for people that care about what we're doing, really care about what we're doing. They feel that they're part of something larger, because then it takes on meaning, and it's fun, and it drives you, and it gives you purpose. And when you wake up in the morning, you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. So we look for that. And then it's a matter of a diverse background. We were hiring obviously across the spectrum. We hire for people, laboratory scientists who are doing work in cells. And then we also look for bioprocess engineering that are looking at scaling that up. People on the food side, on the sensory side, and then on the commercialization, go-to-market side. So across the board, we're hiring. Go to our website. Yeah, we're actively hiring.
What would you say to a pig farmer or hog farmer, what would you say to them that about their business that's wrong? Or what would you say that is, because ultimately you're trying to fundamentally change how pig sausages are made and eaten. So what would you say to that pig farmer?
Well, so it's a great question. I spoke, for instance, so that's a great question. And I actually spoke a little while ago at the American Meat Science Association, and I met a lot of people that work on meat science. I met some farmers, and in other conferences and panels and such, I meet a lot of the farmers as well. And they'll be the first to say that the reason that they are in farming in the first place is they feel that they're providing for people. They feel that they're actually doing a good thing. People are hungry. They need food. We have a growing population, and so they're supplying that food. I would say, first off, there's nothing wrong with farming. There's nothing wrong with providing food. And so the question is always, what is the best way to do that? What are people really wanting from, in our case, the meat experience. And then how can you deliver that better? The way that we make meat now has a lot of problems. And so there are problems around the environment, right? So the climate change and environmental destruction. There are problems around human health that we see around the pandemic right now, antibiotic resistance, and also problems around animal welfare. Huge amount of animals that are being kept in conditions that are not really great. Most people, they're aware of this, and roughly 95% of the world eats meat. And they're aware of this, and to varying degrees, it kind of affects them. So some people are like, yeah, well, that's just the way it is. And then some people are guilty about it. And it was what we call these guilty meat eaters. They love meat, but they hate the way it's made. And I count myself among that. I eat meat. And there's a dissonance that they feel because they feel that they're fundamentally good people, and they struggle to see how they can reconcile what they hear and know about mass meat production with them being a good person. What we make is very appealing. People say, hey, I love meat, and you can make the meat that I know and love, but I can make it without all of the downside. Then I'm all for that.
But there are, of course, pigs that are produced in very high levels of welfare. The bit where parts of the industry can get quite rightly offended by is when they're described as all one thing, and in reality, lots of different ways of rearing pigs. And I'm sure there's many that would be abhorrent and appalling way to some, and others might see it's quite a reasonable way of doing things in a outdoor based system that has good level of shade or conditions that are not that are ideal for a pig in its natural habitat. If that is the case, in that situation, would you then say, well, buy that product, that's fine, but it's the mass produced, intensively reared only system we don't like? Is that where you're at?
You're totally right. Is that there are ways of growing and processing animals that are much more sustainable and produce less harm than others. And really, it's a matter of scale. The thing about industrial animal agriculture is industrial is in the name. So it is large scale. It is efficient, is ruthlessly efficient. One of the benefits that you get from that is you get a large quantity of very affordable meat. And so for a lot of people, that's what they want. The food is, they're looking at their budget, and they look at the food, they look at what they like and what their family likes, and they reach for something that matches their budget. And of course, it's also available in the places that they know and love to shop and the restaurants that they eat. And so that product is almost invariably industrially made. And I'm certainly not, as you said, what if there are a very small quantity of farmers who are doing it in kind of a more natural setting. And so if people, but of course, it costs more. In some cases, it costs a lot more. And there's a much lower volume of that. And it's also not in the places typically that in more of the places that you shop, your restaurants and your supermarkets. I certainly encourage people, if they have the wherewithal to go and get those types of products. But again, most people do not. And so I would say what we're trying to do is make a product which people can reach for on the scale. So the whole reason that New Age Meats takes the approach that we do is we've been talking about taste the whole time. Taste is extremely important, and the experience of eating the meat is extremely important, and the identity of eating the meat is extremely important. But it really doesn't matter if it's too expensive and low scale. So if you can't afford it, and if it's not available anywhere that you shop, then what does it matter? It's not actually I'm talking about the impact of the whole industry, or that our company seeks to have. So if I'm looking at how we design the product, then we think about it as far as how do you make it for the many, how do you sell it for the many, and then how do you get it to the many? It's all about scale. So and that's why we have our approach of using a very precise amount of the cells in order to deliver a sensory aspect that you actually can't get from the plant-based side. And so you combine them, and that as a result, you have a product which actually can scale.
And of course, you're going to have to be ruthlessly industrial with your process, but because it's a plant and some animal cells, that's a very different welfare issue than, or zero welfare, depending where you get your plants from, than an animal. I think what always works better is a positive story, and one that is not about, when we're not against that, but we believe in this and we're for that. Creating desire rather than fear has been my mantra in CPG as a consumer good purchase good market. But it's not easy when you're in between that vortex where there's a lot of anger around industrialized meat production, as you describe it, And but of course, you're going to be an industrialized process. And somebody that wanted to criticize you might say, well, really, it's just another industrialized process for another industrialized process. The affordability is a really important one. And you're absolutely right. It is pointless having something that I can't afford to buy. And that's always been the biggest challenge for your particular type of meat alternative, isn't it? How are you going to do that? And just for a moment, when you say affordable, are you saying if I'm going to buy a meat sausage versus your sausage, it needs to be within what percentage of similarity in price? Is there a number you have there to define that as affordable, or are we thinking just what it should cost?
Well, certainly we designed the whole platform and the product to say when we're at scale, then it should be right in the same level of affordability. I'm throwing out a number. If you're going to be 10% more expensive, then you can also be 10% less expensive. Like you're right in that range where your unit economics are very comparable. In the beginning, though, we need to get there. And economies of scale, going back to even industrial animal agriculture, the economies of scale are amazing. Like they're huge. And as a result, the price has dropped quite a bit. And you can look over the decades to go see the prices drop down quite a bit. One of the big reasons is that there's, again, that the economy of scale. So the fact that we're going to have a pilot facility that we're outputting next year, we do not have the economies of scale. We have a very small pilot facility. And so the product at that point will not be where it will be in the long run. So we'll ramp up to that.
And you must have done your numbers to be able to do that. Believe this time next year you'll know whether you've done that. Is that right?
Yep, exactly.
I always like to ask people this question because at the end of the day, it's always a journey as an entrepreneur, and you've done a terrific job of building a fantastic team, clearly, and a financial level of credibility amongst your investors to get you where you are. Apart from your any direct family or partner, who would you like to thank that has inspired you to move from being this chemical engineer, no doubt highly educated, very bright, and had a whole career mapped up to make this massive leap of faith to be an entrepreneur and be where you are now?
And I think about it in the matter of what made me care in the beginning, right? So like what maybe even, because I had a company previously and it was doing just very well, had great customers and had quite a bit of control over my life and such. But I felt that there wasn't, as I mentioned earlier, I felt it wasn't having the impact. I kept asking myself why. I went on a sabbatical for 2 years after that company. I sold out of that company, and it was really to find out what I should be doing. And I looked at a lot of spaces, including going back into renewable energy, where I was earlier in my career. And there's a lot to say about that. In my searching in the wilderness, I came across increasingly this space of alternative proteins. And there are a few people that I think really well defined why it mattered and the approach that you could take. So I'll say Bruce Friedrich at the Good Food Institute. He's an excellent communicator, and he's able to identify an approach to making the product, approach to making meat, which is not like a shaming approach. So and I think you mentioned earlier, is that there are a lot of people that say like, hey, you shouldn't eat meat anymore. You should do these things. Like, then they kind of appeal to the morals, but it doesn't work on scale. Like, for some people, it certainly does. I'm not saying I'm not saying that people have not been influenced by that. But if you look at the amount of vegetarian veganism in the world, it kind of like stubbornly remains around the same level. There's like a siren song to meat. People keep coming back to it. Mm-hmm. People have a tour duty in vegetarian and veganism. Of course, some people their whole lives, but a lot of people they'll do it and they'll go back. And the reason is, one, it's a very good product. It tastes really good. That delivers that sensory experience. It's very available and it's very affordable. And so unless you're attacking that, you're not going to have the impact. You need to make a product which is very tasty, also affordable and available. And the mantra very early on was stop shaming people and start making the product which people will choose to eat instead of the conventional product. That's on the back of also some other Pat Brown and Ethan Brown at Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat, respectively, are pioneers in the space, and I admire them both. And a lot of what they've said has influenced the way I've thought. It may sound odd to thank my competitors in quotes, but I think they're great. I think what they're doing, I think their products are great. I eat them. I think they're good. I'm grateful to the people who've come before me that allow our company to have the success that it does. So long answer. Yeah.
I think so. In essence, it is a desire, not fear, and those guys have helped influence you to think like that. Well, I salute you for that because I totally agree with it. Thank you for your time on our podcast, and all your background information and ways to connect with you and your business will be in the notes. So
Great.
Please, those that are listening, find a moment to have a look at that, and watch out for New Age Meets, because 2022 is going to be your year, sounds like, Brian. So congratulations, and look forward to following your story as you continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, it's been fun.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. For more information and takeaways from this episode, please visit forwardfoodtech. See you next time.